We want to welcome you to our program this evening, the Oley Valley Community Fair 70 Years of Progress. Our speakers this evening are Kevin Bieber and Dena Kauffman. I know many of you know them, but I'll give a brief introduction. Dena has served as the Oley Fair treasurer since 2003 and has volunteered for the fair her entire life, working in departments, serving on the computer committee, and working in the refreshment stand. Dena is a CPA currently working at home as a mom. She also actively volunteers for the school, Freedom's Lutheran Church, and the Oley Valley Youth League. Kevin started volunteering for the fair at an early age, helping his father. His very first job was given to him by Frank Fisher, who handed him a pick and a shovel and asked him to dig a ditch to run the water line from what was known as the Bingo Building to the Flower Building. I don't know what the Bingo Building was, but I'll trust you. Over the years, he has served on many committees and as the fair treasurer and is currently the president of the Oley Fair, a position he has held since 2003. Kevin is employed by National Penn Bank as a commercial lender. He is also a trustee with the Oley Fire Company, a board member with the Oley Valley Community Education Foundation, and is a director with the Pennsylvania State Fair Association. Join me in welcoming Dena and Kevin tonight.
Thank you, Kelly, for those nice introductions. Also want to thank the Heritage Association for allowing us, or asking us to come out and give a little presentation tonight, which is going to be obviously 70 years of progress of the Oley Valley Community Fair. One thing Dena and I have in common are we're very passionate about the Oley Valley and especially very passionate about the Oley Fair. We feel that we've got a great presentation for you tonight. I need to thank Dena for putting the PowerPoint together. She did a really great job, and I hope you'll agree with me after the presentation. Our goal is tonight to have everybody leave here maybe learning one new thing, and I can honestly say I've already learned one new thing that I'm going to share with you in just a little bit, thanks to Eleanor for bringing some pictures and sharing a little story that in a minute I'm going to share with you also. As we go through these slides, please keep in mind that Dena and I were not around for the first fair, so when we get to the questions and the answers, if there's a question about the first 30 or 40 years of the fair, we may not be able to answer it, but we'll do our best for you. But we have a question. How many people here have been to every fair? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 8 or 10 or so? Okay, great. You're the people we will rely on when those questions come up from the first 30. So anyways, well, in the essence of saving some time, we do want to get started here, and throughout the evening we are going to ask some trivia questions that we do have some prizes for, so if we get to that point and you know the answer, raise your hand, and the first one that Dena and I see raise our hand and you have the right answer, we've got a little prize for you to walk away with tonight. So we're going to do this as a tag team. Dena's going to talk about some stuff, I'll talk about some stuff. We got a lot of PowerPoint pictures, and like I said, hopefully everybody will walk away learning something about the Oley Valley Community Fair. So, Dena, I'm going to let you start. And Gene, you want to get the lights? It was working earlier.
There's an on-off on the side. May have turned itself off if it wasn't being used.
All right, starting out with a little history of how the Oley Fair first began. It all started actually back in 1944 when Warren Levengood went on a hunting trip, a vacation, up to Newfoundland, PA. And while he was there, he realized that a lot of people in that area were much more into going to their local fair, the Green Durst Sterling Fair, instead of hunting. And he was very intrigued by the fair. So he came back home and he got together with his neighbor, Fred Stauffer, told him a lot about the fair, and said, "You really need to come see this fair with me." So in 1945, both of them went back up to the Green Durst Fair, and they both really liked what they saw. So they decided they were going to come home and pitch an idea. First, they got a couple of people together, went and visited some other fairs, But then they came home, and both of them were very involved in the school and in the Oley Lions Club. So they decided to pitch their idea of starting a fair like that in the Oley Valley. So they went to both the school board and the Lions Club, and they had very good backing from both of those groups, which is how they kind of got the ball rolling with everything. So then a couple of them got together and they went to a couple other fairs. They had visited the Myerstown Fair, the South Lebanon Fair, and the East Lampeter Fair, just to gather up some more ideas as to what they want to do in the community here. So in 1946, backed by the Lions Club, and the Lions Club paying for them to get incorporated, get their bylaws written, they actually became an organization in 1946 with hopes of having their first fair in 1947, which is what happened. And as you can see by the first fair book there, the first official Oley Fair was held October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in 1947. The original fair was held over at the Oley School grounds because they had close relationships with the school. They actually held the first fair over there. And at that point in time, the only building that was over there was what is currently known as the Administration Building. But back then, that was the only building that was a nice, big, wide open area for them to be able to hold their fair. The initial officers of the first fair, Dr. Bernard Zakin was voted president, Fred Stauffer was vice president, Carl Blank was the secretary, Emil Rhoda treasurer, and David Yoder was the financial secretary. We have some old photos from the 1950s. We do not have really any photos that I have found of the first few years, 47, 48, 49. But here you will see people setting up the tents in the school grounds. Some Oley residents lent money to the fair because at that point in time the fair really didn't have a lot of money in order to buy some Army surplus tents. And they bought a whole bunch of tents, and then every year they would go out and they would put up all the tents. So yeah, there was a lot of hard work putting up tents this way. I remember hearing the story of one person had to hold the pin, and then the other person hammered the pin, and you did not want your fingers at the wrong spot when you were holding a pin holder as opposed to the pin hammerer. Yeah. A picture from the school grounds from 1951. Now, I admit, I'm a little confused by this. It says, the picture on the back had said it was a horse show from the school grounds from 1951. But in going through some of the old fair books, I see no reference to a horse show before 1953. So I don't know if anyone knows anything about that, but we do have a couple different pictures from 51 that say horse show, but again, there's no reference to that in any part of the entertainment of the fair book, that there was a horse show at that point in time.
Dena.
Yes?
It might be the mule race.
Well, there were mule races for the first 3 years that I could find reference to. 47, 48, and 49, there were mule races. So I was wondering if maybe it was mule pictures, because then there's also, I have another picture of a horse show. But yeah, mule races were for the first 3 years I saw. Then there was a horse show that started around, again, according to the fair books, 53. And then the horse show ran up until 1960, let me see here. Oh, until 1963. And then in 1963, they actually had to move the horse show to after the fair because there were parking issues, which we still have today. But there were parking issues, so they had to move the horse show till after the fair. So it was actually, the fair was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday was a horse show. But in 1965 and 1966, they did not have any horse shows at all. And then in 1967, they came back again with a smaller horse show. And again, if anyone knows anything different, please feel free to interrupt. Until 1979, they had a smaller version of the horse show for those years. And then 79 was the last horse show. This photo also from over at the school grounds. That building was the original French fry and concession stand. And that building actually still stands there today. Next to the administration building, behind the administration building where the tennis courts used to be. That building still stands there today, but these are people waiting in line for French fries in 1952. Another photo from 1952. You can see a little bit of the French fry stand in the back, or the concession stand in the back, and then the school is on your left. And then to the right of this would be where the current high school is standing, but obviously it is not there at that point in time. This is another picture labeled as the horse show from 1952. And if you look, that would be from my perception here, it's in front of where the school, like where the parking lot is now, because you can see the fire company sitting down there off in the distance. Okay. Another picture from 52, we had a lot of pictures from 52. It was an open air circus that was held next to the school as part of their entertainment during the day. And now this article is from 1954, record 70,000 people came to the Oley Fair. That's a lot of people and a lot of cars to park. But according to this article that, if anyone has not had a chance to look, over on the tables over here, we do have some old publicity records that are very well kept. Every year from 1947 for the next 15 or so years, every article that was in the newspaper or letters that were sent to radio stations were all documented in a folder for every year. So when going through those, there's some fascinating information there about past fairs. We have a chance to take a look at that. This was an article from 1954 when Cliff Chafee was president. But it's noted in here that 5,500 pounds of French fries were sold in 1954. And to give you some comparison, in 2013, we sold almost double that, 10,200 pounds of French fries. Also in the article, it does mention that the high school cake and cider stand netted $1,000 from the sale of 500 donated cakes, and that there were 1,072 dozen hamburgers sold and 1,131 dozen hot dogs sold, and 527 dozen Italian sandwiches, and 750 cases of soft drinks, and gallons of coffee. Another nice little, from 1963, another ad in the newspaper. It says, "A piper pipes to the Oley Fair, so all the folks will sure be there. To enjoy the sights you can't compare, and now the fun that's really rare. And have the fun that's really rare." And here's where it advertises the fair for 3 days, and then the horse show on September 29th, which is that following Sunday. Another photo from 1966. On here are several people very active in the fair throughout the beginning years. Starting with the left, Dr. George Rothenberger. Second person, Frank Fisher. Third person, Warren Levengood. Fourth, Frederick Stauffer. And in the very front is George Olinger. And just a little scenario of all the membership throughout the years. In that first year, there were 160 members in 1947. By 1957, there were 585, dropped off a little bit in 1967 with 350, but by 1977, we were up to 1,130 people. And you can see the rest of the numbers today. It kind of fluctuates from year to year. I think with having our fair book now online, a lot of people who used to get the fair book, maybe to be able to enter things from year to year, the different departments, they can now access that information online, so they're not as readily possibly purchasing or being a fair member as they were maybe 10 years ago. Membership is $1 for an adult, and junior members are free. But in 1 year, and if anyone can tell me what year that was, membership did go up to $2 per person, still $1 for senior citizens. Does anyone know what year membership went from $1 to $2? But it only lasted 1 year because there were a lot of complaints. So immediately the following year, it went back down to $1 and it's been set at $1 ever since. Does anyone know when the dues went up to $2 for that 1 year? You can yell it out if you have any ideas.
1985?
What was that?
1985?
Nope, earlier. Later. You're close.
71.
Nope. 75. 1975, they went up to $2 for adults. Juniors were still free, and senior citizens were $1. But there were so many complaints, they immediately turned it back the next year back to $1, and that is what we have kept it at ever since.
Okay, getting into departments of the fair. As you all know, coming to the fair, we have lots of competitive departments. Some interesting facts here that we will go through. If you want to go to the next slide, Dena. The beef, for some reason, did not appear at the first fair. Beef department appeared at the second fair and has been there ever since. So not quite sure why that was not there the first year. In 1955, we added the student category of arts and crafts and sewing. And in 1971, we added the student category of flowers. And in 2003, we added the photography junior department. So other than that, pretty much all of the departments have been running ever since the start of the fair. Here we have an older picture that shows, if you remember, Alice Rafe Snyder or Mildred Ryder showing off a nice market basket from 1949. That was their entry that year. So I don't know if anybody remembers those two individuals, but that's a good picture there.
And in 1949, in the early years, for those of you who remember, a lot of the departments were in the school. Inside the school, they did have the vegetable departments, the sewing departments, but outside in the tents, in addition to the livestock being outside, they did have the farm crops exhibits were outside as well. Some of the commercial exhibitors were inside, some of the commercial exhibitors were outside. But this picture would have been inside the administration building or the former high school over here.
Okay, before we go to the next slide, trivia question again. As we all know, the department champions are awarded a trophy at the fair on Saturday evening. Does anybody know what year those department trophies started?
1954.
Wrong. Wrong. Lower.
52.
No, higher.
53.
Whoever said 1953, there you go, Linda Schlegel. 1953 was the first department trophies that were awarded. Does anybody recognize anybody in this photo? Okay, we got Danny Levingood in the photo. We got David Snyder. I'm not sure. I'm asking you. Robert Chainley, I think I heard. Danny Schlegel. Danny, you're here, right? Danny Schlegel, yep.
Cliff Chafee, Ralph Richard.
That photo is actually over on the table. That photo is actually over here on the table, and if anybody would like to, after the presentation, if you want to just let us know if you know any of these people, we can jot it down on the back of the photo. So, anyways, that was the first year that the trophies were awarded, back in 1953. Okay, moving right along for entries and premiums. Here you can see in 1947, we gave out a total of $267.25 in premiums. Went along years, 1987 gave out a total of $11,233 in premiums. And in 2015, it just continues to grow, a total of $23,429 in premiums. The first couple of years, we only offered first place. In 1951, we started giving first, second, and third, as we do today. And some categories, such as photography, today go up to 10 places, first through 10. So you can see there's quite a bit of money that is awarded in premium money throughout the years at the fair, and especially getting into the most recent years. And this is probably a good time to talk about fair funding. I've had a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an article in the paper in regards to fair funding in the state budget. And ever since then, I've had a couple people ask me about the fair funding and where it stands and what exactly is going on. I can give you tonight the most recent update as we sit here. Basically, our governor has on his desk a fiscal code that he is being asked to sign that will include $4 million in the fair fund budget line. Now that $4 million unfortunately isn't just for the 109 fairs in the state of Pennsylvania. That extends to the FFA programs, the 4-H programs, etc. However, we get our good fair share out of that money. What I was also being told is that if the governor declines to sign that fiscal code, that I'm not exactly sure how this all works up in Harrisburg, but somehow the Republicans and Democrats of the Senate up there have enough authority to put this through. And I can assure you that we have a lot of friends on the Hill up there, including our own senator locally here, Judy Schwenk, that supports fair funding. So all of our, eyes and ears are attached to the governor's desk right now to find out what's going to happen. As far as fair funding goes, there's a lot of people that don't realize that fairs do receive money back from the state after the fair for their operating expenses, as well as the premium money. You do not get 100% back. It all depends on how many days your fair runs and how much of your operating expenses and your premium money was distributed. Typically, I can tell you right now, we are waiting on last year's check yet, which is approximately $12,000. And that's even low because of the previous budgets being cut. So hopefully, we'll get that check soon. And then as we move forward here into the 2016 fair season, there will be a budget line item of $4 million for the fair fund line item. And included in that line item would be for capital improvements also. So as we do capital improvements on the fairgrounds, such as one of the projects that we're doing right now, which we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, we can get dollar for dollar matching funds up to $50,000. So if we spend $50,000, we can get $25,000 back, providing we're approved and the money is in the budget. So we're really keeping our fingers crossed because we've done some improvements here over the past year or two that we want to put in for funding, and especially for the project that we're doing right now. But as you see your local senators and House of representatives, please let them know that you fully support fair funding and you want to see it passed. And hopefully we'll get some good news here real shortly. So as we move on here, you're going to see the Grand Champion quilt from 1953. On the picture here is Ann Hafer, Mrs. Woodrow Rothenberger, and Mrs. Van Leer. Mrs. Van Leer made the quilt, and would be quite interesting to know where this quilt is today. Hopefully it's somewhere safe and sound, but looks like a really nice quilt that was made back in 1953. Another older picture here with Lucille Petersheim and some arts and crafts that were displayed there. And that was 1957. Now, before we get to this next picture, which you had a real quick glance at, when Dena puts that picture up again, I want everybody to take a real close look, and we've got an award or a little gift for the person that can identify who is in this picture. So put your hand up, don't yell it out so we can get the first person to put their hand up. So here we go, Dena, go ahead. Richard, you got it. Steve Fisher. Steve, do you remember this picture? Where are you at, Steve?
Not really.
Not really. Did you win Grand Champion? Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Anyways, yeah, that is our own Steve Fisher with beef, and hopefully he was a big winner that year. And that was 1957, if you can't see that at the bottom. I don't know. Anybody else know the other person in the picture? Steve?
Yeah, I've been thinking here and I can't get it up right.
Herbert Kauffman.
I really don't know the answer, so. Buster the Bull. Well, if anybody thinks about it throughout the evening, please let us know, because we really do want to mark these pictures with all the people that we know that are in it. So come up to us afterwards and we'll be sure to mark those. All right, moving right along here. We have, I heard the name, yes, Edna Rhodes Doutrick and Minnie Peters. And as you will see later on in the program, our pumpkins have gotten quite bigger. So, but those are some pretty nice pumpkins, and back in 1957, hopefully they won some awards too for their work. But yes, Edna Rhodes Doutrick and Minnie Peters showing off their wares. And here we got 1958 Beef Show. Yep, 1958 Beef Show. And you can see that was taking place outside one of the surplus tents. Looks like it was a nice day, so we were able to do that outside. All right, 1964 flower entries. We're not quite sure who these two individuals are, so if anybody again knows any of these people, please see us afterwards. But not sure if they were judges or helpers or what exactly they were doing there. And here we have the baked goods display from 2014 versus 1998. You'll see back in 1988. You'll see back then we had to cover them, everything with plastic. And although the displays were very nice, we've got a lot of great people that are involved with the fair today also that do a lot of nice decorating, as you will see with the Best of Show display coming up later on. These people do a fabulous job and work very hard all week long in making sure that when the doors open on Thursday, we've got a real nice display of pretty much everything. From cakes to pies to photography to the whole 9 yards. A couple years ago, we got some nice stands that were built that we were able to display these products nicely onto. Howard Stoltz Foods made those stands for us for the building that we're actually in here today. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Dena.
Okay, and next we're going to move on to, and I should have had a previous one, of how we used to enter things at the fair. If you recall, and I didn't have one, and I didn't think about it, putting an old entry tag, those triplicate entry tags where you would handwrite your name and address on every tag and then write down what you were entering on every tag. Then you'd bring your entries up to the fairgrounds. In the beginning, you could actually enter on Thursday morning yet, right before the judging. Later that was changed to you had to enter everything by Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the judging occurred on Thursday morning. And later it moved to you enter on Monday and Tuesday, and all the judging is currently done on Wednesday. So at 9 a.m. on Thursday morning, the fair is ready to open now. It's kind of been the progression through the years. But if you remember having to fill out an entry tag for everything you wanted to enter, in 1998 we decided to computerize the way we took entries. And what you would do is you get entry tags pre-printed with just your name on them, and then you would come to the different departments as you did before, and they would put a label on the tag of what you were entering. So you didn't have to pre-register anything, you just showed up on Tuesday and Wednesday, or Wednesday and Thursday, or Monday and Tuesday, and you came and you got your computerized entry tag.
If anybody wants to know what Danny Levingood looked like 18 years ago, that would be him in the picture.
And then actually in 2007, we actually switched computer programs. If you remember, when we did the first computer program, there were barcodes and bar scanners and computers in every department. And they would scan in the entry tag after you enter it. Well, starting in 2007, we switched computer systems, and now everything is actually done out of the Fair Center, where you can pre-register with the list of items you want to enter, and we will give you pre-printed entry tags with everything on it. Or you can still show up on Monday and Tuesday night, and just have the tags printed on the fly. So if you decide to go home and quick bake something else, you can still come in Tuesday night and get your entry tag before judging started on Wednesday. And just some of our current fruit exhibits from 2009. And then a picture from 2014 from our photography exhibit. Photography that came into the first year was 1999. And that is one of the fastest growing departments that we have at the fair. In 1999, the first year that we had the photography department, we had 97 entries in the photography. Sometimes it always takes a year to get a new department rolling because people don't read the fair book that closely. So they come to the fair and they're like, oh, I didn't know I could enter photography. So currently, this past year in 2015, we had 1,260 entries of photography, which is the current largest category that we have at the Oley Fair. Vegetables is always another pretty high entry category, but definitely photography. I'm thinking everyone is able to take a picture and feels very comfortable with getting a picture developed. Not everyone is comfortable about gardening and growing things, so definitely it is a huge display that we have in the Fair Center.
Just a side note on the photography category, there's two departments up at the Pennsylvania State Farm Show that started up there because of the Oley Fair. One being photography, which is actually chaired by our own Harold Hoke, and have several representatives from the Oley Fair working there in Harrisburg at the farm show. And the other contest was the bowling pin contest, started up at the farm show because of the Oley Fair. So something to be proud of, that on a state level, there's something that was started just because of what we did here. As far as contests go, we feel we've got a good variety of contests. As you can see, what we try and do each year is we do our best to maybe add one new contest a year, or if one is kind of fading away, take it away and replace it. Not every year do we have a new contest, but most years you do find that there is something new. I'm not so sure in 2016 we're going to have something new. As of right now, we don't have anything, but keep your eyes and ears open. If not this year, definitely next year. One of the interesting contests that people try and win, because it takes them to the state level, is the chocolate cake and bar contest, the angel food cake contest, and the apple pie contest. That the winners that are from all 109 fairs, if they decide to send somebody to farm show, if you win at your local fair, you go to the farm show for the ultimate grand prize, the state championship as we call it. And if you've never been there to see that, that's something to see. You may want to try and take that in future years if you can. We have had one time the apple pie state championship winner. That was several years ago. That probably goes back about 12, 15 years. And Linda Reinert has twice placed in the top 5 for the Angel Food Cake Contest. So we're pulling for her to win that one of these years. So, and we've also had some juniors win in the chocolate cookie bar contest. And we've also had a top 5 placement in the chocolate cake. So we do very well up at Farm Show from time to time. And there's also a lot of people that enter their exhibits that were entered here at the fair at Farm Show and do very well. So that's pretty much the contest that we have. Yeah.
I know in talking to people from some other fairs, like our chocolate cake contest, this past year was the Farm Show's 100th anniversary, and it was a very big deal to be able to enter your cake at the Harrisburg level, so people would fair jump. They would enter at every fair in that local area trying to win first place, and sometimes they would have 2 cakes entered, one under their name, one under their husband's name, in order to try to win up at the Harrisburg level. But people are very disappointed because at Oley, we actually only allow, and this has been from the beginning, people who live in Oley Township and all the townships that surround Oley, they're the only people allowed to enter at the Oley Fair, in addition to employees of the school and of the VOTEC. So people are very disappointed, especially this past year, that they're not allowed to enter at the Oley Fair. But that being said, we probably have more entries here, limiting the number of people who can enter than some of these other fairs, and that's probably true of a lot of our departments. You know, the entries we have here are phenomenal, and if we opened it up to other areas besides those surrounding Oley, I don't know what we do with all the entries, because some years we are running out of room here already. So we have a very, very productive fair, even limiting the number of entries that we have.
Very true. Oley's got a lot to be proud of. As far as contests go, here's one that has really taken off. Here you're going to see the 2015 pumpkin. That was the largest pumpkin, I forget the weight, 1,233 pounds. This is the largest pumpkin that we have ever had in the Oley Fair, and it was grown by Terry Lash, and Terry is here tonight. He's been the pumpkin king for the past 2 years. And I have to tell you, I've had the opportunity to watch Terry grow these pumpkins and learn how he grows these pumpkins. And this is not just throw the seeds in the ground and water it a little bit at night and go to bed and wake up the next morning and see how much it grew. Terry puts a lot of time into this. And this contest, let me tell you a little story, because this gentleman's here tonight too. A couple of years ago, Johnny Knowles kind of whispered into my ear and said, the Oley Fair needs to have a pumpkin weigh-off. And that's as these pumpkins were getting bigger and bigger. So, you know, I listened to people and thought about this for a year or so, and went to the board, and we agreed we were going to have a pumpkin weigh-off. I think Johnny's expectations, I may be wrong, were to have it on Thursday morning or so of the fair, and not quite sure how that exactly would have happened. So we started the pumpkin weigh-off 2 years ago. We started it on a Wednesday night as a kickoff to the Oley Fair. And, you know, we had a couple pumpkins come in, and a couple more come in, and a couple more come in, and we had, I don't remember the exact number, but we had a bunch of pumpkins. And quite frankly, you know, we did it down at the other end of the fairgrounds, no seating, just kind of, okay, there'll be a few people that'll show up. We had a great crowd. So this past year, we moved it down to the stage area where there would be seating, and we had, you know, a lot of pumpkins again, and a lot of people for a Wednesday night at the fair, and this created a lot of excitement. And I have to admit, it was really a lot of fun, especially when we pretty much knew, for the most part, that Terry was going to have the winning pumpkin again, and we were thinking it might be a record, so we hid the scale, the digital scale that showed the number until the pumpkin was settled down, and then we took the paper off of it and showed everybody the record pumpkin. So this committee of Terry and a bunch of others that was put together have done a fabulous job in putting together the pumpkin patch. The pumpkin patch idea came by, I was up at the York Fair, walking through one of their inside buildings that, you know, if you've been to York Fair, their buildings are, you could put all of our buildings in one of their buildings. And they had what was called a big sign there, pumpkin patch, and they had pumpkins and various other things there. And it just kind of clicked, you know, we're having the pumpkin way off, let's do something as far as displaying these with the pumpkin patch, because these pumpkins were getting so big that we, number one, could not fit them into the ag building anymore. And as we were fitting them into the ag building, we had to build up the shelves so they wouldn't collapse. So we solved that problem. We've got the pumpkin way off now. We've got some great sponsors. We give away a lot of money that evening, and a lot of excitement is built. And we've got a lot of publicity on that too, which has helped, obviously, with the people attending the fair, especially the first year when it was in the paper. Red Eagle did a great job. Everybody was coming saying, where's the pumpkin patch? Where's the pumpkin patch? So this has been something that I'm proud of, and the committee is proud of for putting together and doing a great job. Oh, yes. Terry, as I mentioned, is here tonight, and if this is the time of the year, right about now, getting close, where you're going to want to plant those pumpkin seeds. And Terry has some. Now, he doesn't have them here with him tonight, but if you give him, you know, your name or something, I guarantee you he will get them to you, or it's my understanding they're at Crispin's Meat Market. Terry, where else did you say? Glicks and Oley Valley Feed. So feel free, you can go get them for free, you can plant them, and if you need advice, Terry does not keep this as a secret. Terry will help you along, and hopefully you will beat Terry this year and take home the big prize. But I will tell you, it's not gonna, if you have a small garden, it's not gonna work. Yeah, Terry literally turns his backyard into a pumpkin patch. So anyways, moving on here, as I mentioned earlier, we got some very creative people here at the fair that do a wonderful job, and here is the Best of Show display. Typically this display is right here in this building towards the back where the kitchen is. Obviously the backdrop is the Best of Show quilt, and then all of the other Best of Show entries go in this display. So beautiful job by the people that are involved in putting this together.
Now we're going to go through some of the fair property and what has changed over the years with some of the buildings that we have on the fairgrounds. In the first few years, as you know, the fair started on the grounds of the Oley Valley High School. But in 1958, 1959, some building expansions of the school no longer allowed the fair to have use of the former area on the school grounds. So the major portion of the fair was moved over to the fire company grounds because it was adjacent. Everything was right here. So that happened again. In 1959, I believe, was the first fair that was over here. 1953 view from the newspaper of all the tents at the Oley School grounds. Now, from a perspective, I can't really tell you which direction this is looking, but based on the height of it, I'm guessing we're looking out of one of the school windows or on top of the school building. Then with the move over to the fairgrounds, there were only two buildings that were originally here on the fairgrounds when the fair moved over here. And that was the Refreshment Building, the old Refreshment Building, and the Bingo Building. And the Bingo Building, for those of you who do not know, is where we were standing right now. There was a building here that was referred to as a bingo building because during carnivals, during the summer, the fire company, they would hold bingo in this building. And then there was a refreshment building. And I believe there was also a small stage down where the current stage is as well. So as the fair started coming over here, there was more things that were needed over here. So in 1961, the cattle barn was built, the French fry building was built, and more permanent restrooms were built. Now those restrooms are not as big as the current restroom building is now. It was about half that size when the original restrooms were built. Okay. All right. Now this is a view from the school from 1964. And you can see the bingo building, you can see the refreshment building, and then also the building to the left, I believe, was built in 1964, and that was the original flower building. In 1965, a year later, is when the commercial building was built, and do you want to point to where the commercial building would be? So behind the flower building, that is where the current commercial building is, the commercial exhibit building. Now, there is one trivia question we have here. Okay. Kind of in the background there is smoke coming up, it appears. Does anyone know why there would be smoke coming up from down there?
Chicken barbecue.
You are correct. We used to have it. The park company used to hold a chicken barbecue during the fair, and they would smoke the chickens right outside the fire company. Very good. Okay, those are the three buildings that are there from 1964. And then 1965, from what I read from the fair books, it was very exciting because there was a Blacktopped commercial exhibit building, which would be able to house some of the commercial exhibitors. In later year, I don't remember what that was, we actually installed, it gets very hot in there. When you have a hot fair, it gets very, very hot in the commercial exhibit building. So we did install some fans in that building in the past 10 years, I would say, in order to help us with ventilation with that commercial exhibit building.
This blacktop here occurred because of a gentleman that sits here. He is in charge of putting boats in the storage for the winter. And if you remember, there was only a little bit of blacktop there and the rest was stones. Well, as the boats were pulling in, the wheels were spinning, and this has happened year after year after year. So John Felix came to me 2 or 3 years ago and said, we need to blacktop this so the boat's wheels don't spin and stones flying all over the place. So thanks to John Felix, we put some blacktop in front of the commercial exhibit building. And John, I think you'll agree it works wonderful, right? Thumbs up, there you go.
We're looking for donations, though. Then in 1970 was the Grange building, what was first referred to as the Grange building. Now we refer to it as the agricultural building, where a place to exhibit some of the Grange exhibits, some of the farm crops, vegetables, things that are still housed there today. So that was built in 1970. And then in 1978 view, this is actually from the cover of the 1979 fair book. You can see, I'm guessing this might be a top of a Ferris wheel down there. You can see what the fairgrounds looked like at that end. And one thing to point out on here is you see the dairy barn in the top left, and right below that is the agricultural building that was built in 1970, and then right below that you will see tents. That is because the pole building and the cattle building down there was only built in 1980. So this view kind of shows you before. Now I do not really remember even having a silo down there. I don't know how many of you remember having a silo on the fairgrounds, but that is something that I don't quite remember. And then in 1980 is when we erected the livestock pole building. And you can see kind of the construction through the process, and this is also the front of the fair book in 1980.
Okay, moving right along here. 1985 aerial view. And the reason we wanted to point this out is right now, for those of you who go to the tractor pulls at the fair, they're down below the hill. I'm not sure what year they moved down there, but this is where the tractor pulls used to be, right here. Pretty much right, I don't want to say in the middle of the parking lot, but right near the top edge of the parking lot. So it would take all that parking away, which today we definitely need. But years ago, like I said, it got moved down below the hill, but I think this is a pretty neat aerial view showing all the tents and the show at the fair. Yes, actually, there's something a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people don't know, but something that gets miscommunicated from time to time is the grounds here. There are 14 acres roughly of grounds that are owned by the Oley Fire Company. The Oley Fair does not own much land at all. There's two pieces of land we own, one being this field right behind the dairy barn right here, up to the tree line. And then the other piece being right below the commercial exhibit building, just a very small piece down there. Those are two pieces that the fair owns. Other than that, the fire company owns everything you see here. We've got a great working relationship with the fire company, which we'll talk about later on when we get to the new buildings. But there's a lease agreement that is in place between the fair and the fire company. It's a long-term lease agreement with extensions. And again, we've got a great partnership. We work together. The fire company gets all the money from the parking. And just at the end of the fair, hopefully with 3 nice days, everybody makes out. So just wanted to pinpoint that out, that the majority of the grounds that we have here are owned by the fire company with the exception of 2 parcels. Okay, here we got 1985, the Volunteers Pavilion. We built the little extension onto the pavilion, so when it did rain, people had a little place to go and sit and enjoy the music. And again, we labeled that the Volunteers Pavilion for all the volunteers that support and help at the fair. Kelly, this was the bingo building, in case you didn't get that, okay? This is when it was being demolished, the bingo building back in 1997. This was being demolished so we could make place and room for the new building, which what we are sitting in here today. The bingo building was quite unique. It was also used by the school for some kindergarten classes. I know I personally went to the bingo building for kindergarten, and one of the things I remember is pretty much back in this corner where during the fair our treasurer's office was, there was a milk cooler. And if you were lucky enough to be picked by the teacher, she usually picked 2 per day, you went and took the milk crate and got the milk for all your classmates for lunchtime. So just a little something I remember out of the bingo building. So that was the end of the era for the bingo building, and that building served, if you know Dave Allgaier, an auctioneer, every other Saturday he was in there having an auction, which drew a lot of community people too. So that building had a lot of memories, but we needed to move on. And moving on, we built the Oley Fair Center, as you can see it here. When we built the Fair Center, the committee that was involved, we knew obviously we were going to use it for the fair, but we also said we were going to build it for the intention of renting it out for weddings, birthday parties, auctions, whatever. And thought we could gain a few bucks here and there. And little did we realize that this would become a major attraction for rentals. Having it rented a lot on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the whole weekend. Even during the week, we have it rented, quite a bit. But this place has really taken off and has really been a good place for the community to gather for, like I said, weddings, birthday parties, whatever. The Flower Building, 2003, otherwise known as the Volunteers Memorial Building. After we refurbished this building, we decided to name it in memory of all the past volunteers, and that was again done in 2003. This building houses, which is right over here to my left, houses the floral, the arts and crafts, and usually just a couple other things that we end up putting in there. That building during the winter time, we store some cars in there, so we gain a little bit of extra revenue in regards to some storage of cars as we store in the commercial exhibit building some boats and also cars down there throughout the winter. 2008, a much needed refurbished refreshment building, or new refreshment building. I mentioned earlier, we've got a great partnership with the fire company, and for those of you who are familiar, the fire company has several events throughout the summer that are their fundraising events. In fact, one coming up here just this weekend, which is a very large event, people coming from all over the country to it. It's an antique motorcycle show. And for those of you who remember the old Refreshment Building, it was okay, but the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, who comes out and pretty much checks over things and makes sure we're sanitary and doing things the right way, they were just kind of getting, not upset, but just letting us know that we weren't necessarily up to code on some things, and they didn't like the open rafters with the grease hanging up there and all that kind of good stuff, which I don't blame them. We got a committee together between the fire company and the fair, and we did a joint venture of building this building back in 2008. We desperately needed this building with the amount of food we're producing and selling during the fair and also during the fire company events. With the old building, there's just no way we could do it today. We would not have enough storage. Even our walk-in that we have today over here for this coming weekend, the Peach Festival, etc., it gets packed, very full, and we desperately needed this building. So our good relationships with the fire company allowed us to do this as a 50-50 project, and we originally had thought about maybe not putting in a basement to this building, and thank goodness we did, because we just need it for storage. So there was a basement put into this building, as you can see in the top left, and then the building in itself as it sits there. Another venture with the fire company was the French Fry Building. 2012, we built this building, and basically same thing. The old building was just not quite cutting it anymore. We needed a little bit more room, we needed more storage space, we just needed to work better and make also the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture happy. So we got together, we built this building, and the workflow out of it is great. They serve a lot of French fries very quickly during the fair, and during the summer events serve a lot of French fries and various other things too that we can make out of that building. So that has really served us well. We are very proud of how we have kept up to date with all of our equipment and all of our buildings. And I can tell you, when the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture comes out here, they literally spend just a couple minutes, walk around, do their paperwork, and say, okay, this is definitely a place that I would come to eat. We had a gentleman that, his name was Art, from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and one day he's retired, the next day he isn't, so I'm not sure if he's still working today or not. But anyways, he was here on a Thursday, as usually they do, show up, and he did his paperwork and everything, and I came around the corner on a Saturday of the fair and saw him standing there, and I think he saw my face, my jaw just dropped, because I couldn't understand why he would be back twice. He immediately put up his hand and he said, "I'm here for pleasure." He said, "This is definitely a place I will bring my family to eat." So that was really nice to hear that. So anyways. Okay, 2015, this building here, we had an expansion put out the front, and you see in the top left-hand corner the old ticket booths that used to sit out in front of the freshman stand. Then we moved them to the back here to avoid the congestion. They served us well, they were great, and some people hated to see them go, but the reason we did this, the primary reason, is because of, unfortunately, you gotta think about this stuff, safety and security of our volunteers. So what we did is the bottom left-hand picture here, those 4 windows in the front are now the 4 ticket booth windows, which you probably already know. Worked out very well this past year. Everybody was happy, so when our volunteers are happy, we're happy. And also at the top of the new addition, we have the bell at the top. And if you didn't hear the story of that bell came from the Oley Fire Company. It was on the roof. When they did the roof repairs, or a new roof to the fire company, took it down. And for probably 5 years, literally, we kept moving this thing around because it was in everybody's way. Come fair time, we needed to move it because it was in somebody's way. And it finally clicked for the committee that, hey, we're building this addition. This would look really good up there. Howard Stoltzfus, who was our builder, we went to him and said, we've got a bell. Can we get it up there? And what do we do? And if you know Howard, he figures everything out. And lo and behold, the bell now has a home. And we ring that bell now. We're going to continue to ring it. We had opening ceremonies this past year. We rang it in the memory of all of our past volunteers. At a board meeting a couple months ago, I asked the group if they wanted to have opening ceremonies again and ring the bell, and it was an overwhelming yes. So we're going to, every year on a Thursday around noontime, have the opening ceremonies and the ringing of the bell in the memory of all of our past volunteers. Okay. 2016, this is our project right now as we stand here. If you go behind the French fry building, you will see exactly what you see there. It is an extension. On the back of the French fry building, we are going to be putting in a walk-in refrigerator back there. And then the other side of it will be a little place for our volunteers to be able to sit down when they take a break. Hopefully we'll put a picnic table or something in there. But the walk-in cooler will be on this end. It's going to allow us to, during the fair, unload French fries in a skid and put them with a forklift, put them directly into the walk-in, as well as all the milkshake mix and all that kind of good stuff. Previously, for many years, on a Thursday morning, the French fry truck would pull up. We'd have a line of 5 or 6 people, and literally handing 30 pounds of French fry bags, one after the other, into what was the Wegmans truck. Wegmans Delicatessen always brought a truck over, a refrigerated truck that we would, keep back there. And then we would do the same when the Longacres truck would pull up with the milkshake mix and everything. So you do that Thursday morning and Friday morning, and it kind of gets old after a while. And we decided, again, between the fair and the fire company, because the fire company will also use this throughout the summer, we were going to build a walk-in. So we are in that process right now. Howard Stoltzfus is doing that. Longacre Electric is going to put in the walk-in. And that should be most likely operational, hopefully here in another, month or two at the most, probably. This is one of those reasons why I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for the capital improvement money from the state through the fiscal code with the Pennsylvania State Fair money, because this is a project that we can probably get about $25,000 back if that money goes through and we get that line item from the state. So if not, the fair and the fire company are splitting that cost, but hopefully there will be a little bit of money left on the table up in Harrisburg for us for that. So keep your eyes peeled for that when you come to the fair or even before.
So as you can see, we've had many years of progress from the Oley Fair. From looking at our property progress from 1953 with all the tents out back at the school and being on the school grounds, to moving over to where we're at today with still lots of tents, but lots of buildings as well, and lots of nice facilities over on the fire company grounds. We've also had a lot of progress with our exhibits. On the left, a farm crop exhibit from 1966. That is a picture of Robin Border and Danny Levengood examining actually some squash, it looks like. To where we're at today with the farm crops and the vegetable displays, and how everyone really puts a lot of effort into making their displays really nice for the fairgoers to enjoy. And our food changes from throughout the year. French fries a French fry line in 1952, a French fry line in 2015. And although the 2015 line looks very daunting, I kind of stood in line one time just to time it, and then literally in less than 5 minutes, boom, you were through that line. With the fryers we have now, that line might be very intimidating coming out to the back of the fair center here, but you're in line, it's like one long line, there's lots of serving windows up the top, and it's less than 5 minutes that you're there.
For a gift, how many pounds of French fries did we go through in 2015?
10,259. Who was the other one that said 10,200?
Someone else over there said 10,200. Was there two?
Okay, I got two here.
There's one back here too, Kevin.
Okay, I got three.
Glad to see you were paying attention.
She had it down to 10,259.
And I did hear some stories back in the early years. Mr. Heist used to walk around selling peanuts back at some of those early fairs as well, back in the 50s. I don't know if anyone remembers that or not, but I remember being told that he walked around selling peanuts. And some of the food options we have still good old hamburgers and hot dogs, but added some funnel cakes since then, since those first years. I think people definitely enjoy the food.
Here's something also that has really changed and I'm really proud of. Michelle Beekman takes care of our sponsorships and does an outstanding job. And a couple years ago, we built that trifold board that is at the flagpole out here, listing our gold, silver, and bronze sponsors. And we're very happy for what we get in because entertainment expense is just on the rise, as we pretty much all know. So we rely on our sponsors to pretty much cover our entertainment expense. The other thing we started several years ago was blue ribbon, red ribbon, and yellow ribbon sponsors. I'm very happy to say for 2016, we have Graber Lettering coming back as a yellow ribbon sponsor and Deca Batteries. We also have one more proposal out there we're not sure of yet. Unfortunately, we don't have any red ribbon sponsors yet, but we're working on that. And the blue ribbon sponsors, we have National Penn Bank, who has been with us since day one of when we started that program. Berks Country, Reading Eagle, they have done an outstanding job for us as far as publicity and everything goes too. And then we also have, over the past 2 years, Brookledge, which is located a stone's throw away from us. So we have been very fortunate to have a lot of sponsors, but we can always use more. So if anybody knows anybody that wants a sponsor, please see us.
And entertainment, again, a picture from the 1952 fair, which was an open-air circus outside, to 2015 with the Oley High School Band. Looking back through some of the books and some of the entertainment that has occurred throughout the years, like we mentioned earlier, the mule races, the horse show. One year we had pig races down near the agricultural building. Definitely the high school has been a big partner with us from the very beginning. And going through, a lot of times on Saturday nights, even into the 80s, the Oley High School Band was a primary entertainment on a Saturday night. And they still come over in their marching band uniforms on a Friday afternoon. The last couple of years, the chorus, orchestra, and band have given concerts on Thursday morning. There's always a lot of local support for the fair. Some of the early years, not only was the Oley High School Band the entertainment on one night, but one night was a Brandywine High School Band. Another night it was a Daniel Boone High School Band. We've had the U.S. Army Band here for some shows. Then in some years we've had some very big name stars. We had Sally Starr here back in the 80s. We had Barbara Fairchild. You may remember we had John Bressler here a couple of years. Eastside Dave and the Pine Ridge Mountain Boys. In 1967 they had their first talent show, where that was a big surprise coming up for 1967, where they actually hosted a talent show for several years. And in one year, I'm not sure which year, they actually had fashion show of all the first place winners. From the needlework department, they had a fashion show one night during the entertainment time slot. They had a little fashion show for everything. So as you can see, entertainment has changed a lot, but yet, with the Oley High School Band, it actually has been almost the same for the last 70 years. And throughout those years as well, we've had a lot of great leadership from our presidents. Actually, that is not correct. I'm missing Dr. Zakin. Yeah. Oh, there we go. They're flip-flops. Okay. First president, Dr. Zakin, 1946 to 1950. Cliff Chafee from 51 to 56. Raymond Levan from 57 to, another typo, 59? Oh, let me see here. Yep, to 59. And then Warren Levengood from 60 to 66. Frank Fisher, who filled in for 2 different terms, 67 and 68, he kind of filled in for that year. And then back again in 72 to 82. And then John Frankhauser was from 1968 to 1971. All great leadership by these people. And the last 3 presidents that we had, from 83 to 87, George Fry. From 88 to 2002, Daniel Levengood. And 2003 to current, Kevin Bieber. And George and Danny are still 2 of our vice presidents that we have currently. So they continue to give These three gentlemen give a lot of time year-round to this facility, to the fair, and to the fire company as well.
Before we get into any questions and answers, the one thing I did mention earlier that I wanted to talk about, I was hoping everybody would learn something new before you left here tonight. The one thing that I learned new tonight, Eleanor Shaner had brought some pictures of the women's club stands that were over at the school, and she was telling us, which I had no idea, and Dena had no idea either, on when the fair was over at the school, on a Thursday, the kids would still have the opportunity to be picked up by the bus, come to the school for field day, and the awards that were given on field day were food tickets to the fair. So that's something I had no idea about, and I don't know if anybody else knew that or not, but that was kind of interesting. Did you win some of those food tickets? So anyways, let me turn this over.
Just one quote I want to share with you that actually came out of a 1965 fair book, and I really think it still expresses what the fair is all about today. The quote was, "Years ago, the country fair was the highlight of the year. People just couldn't wait to show off their prize-winning wares, and the children went wild. Here at Oley, we've tried to preserve that old-fashioned nostalgia of yesteryear." And I think that's a great quote from 65, and I think that really still applies today. I think kids really look forward to the fair from the schools, being able to come over after school, and I really think we've tried to somewhat maintain some of that old-fashioned nostalgia. So, anyone have any questions that someone else might be able to help answer if we can't?
You mentioned about pumpkin, that Bieber group, that's sponsored by.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Interesting how sometimes sponsors come about. One weekend I was at Chatty's, if you're familiar with that, eating breakfast, and I did not know the Blyler family. And are they here by any chance? No? Okay. Anyways, Mr. Blyler came up to me and said, "Are you Kevin?" I said, "Yes," and he introduced himself, and he said, "Our family wants to sponsor something." And that was pretty much right after the fair when we had the juniors and the seniors all together for the pumpkin patch that first year. And it just wasn't quite fair, you wanted to break it apart if you could. So I thought about it and talked to him, and he agreed to sponsor the junior division, and Grimm's Family Farm sponsors the senior division. So it really worked out well this past year. In fact, we had just enough prizes for every kid that entered a pumpkin to win a cash prize. And then there was one award we gave as the nicest pumpkin, which we had just one more, that won a bicycle. Every kid that entered a pumpkin won either cash or the bicycle, and then they were all ecstatic. So it really worked out well, and hopefully that'll happen again this year. Thank you for mentioning that. Any other questions? Yeah?
Do you have no records of the Pennsylvania German programs that were done on Thursday mornings for years?
Yes, in 1967 was the first year that there was at least that I saw in a fair book, that was designated as the PA Dutch Day. So that started in 1967, and the Leroy Heppentrager Band was the primary entertainment of that. And I believe he just passed away maybe within the last 10 years because he had been back for many years after that. But that is the first record that primarily got going through the fair books of the Pennsylvania Dutch program on a Thursday.
And Para Wolf was part of what brought the school, the Pennsylvania German Club over.
Yes, he had really helped getting that program rolling then again in like the late 80s when he came to the Oley Valley to help reviving that Pennsylvania Dutch Day and having that Thursday with some of the German club here.
Do you have any pictures?
No, I don't. We are, just to let everyone know, we are very light on pictures from the 70s and the 80s. Do not have a lot of the memorabilia you will see out here. Pictures that we have are from 50s and 60s, 70s, very little, and I have a couple from the late 80s, but a lot of other photographs. If anyone has any that we could even scan in to get copies of, it would be very helpful, because those are kind of, I'm going to call them the lost years, the 70s and 80s. But I don't have any specific pictures of the Dutch program, minus what's from the last almost 20 years. We do have pictures in the scrapbooks from those years of the Dutch program. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I have an experience at the Oley Fair. In 1957, a friend of mine was a salesman for Spanish Ford in Boyertown. He called me up one in the afternoon and said, "Are you busy this evening?" I said, "Oh, not really, why? We need people to drive cars from Boyertown to the Oley Fair, and they were parked in the bank at the school on that side." So we were real good friends. We played basketball and all. And he said, "I'm going to let you have the best car." I drove the '57 Ford Thunderbird, white with a black top, brand spanking new, up to Oley and put it on the bank up there. It had black and white interior, and the single price of the windshield I'll never forget was $4,171.
Just a little side note on that. I would always get excited as a younger kid when, I believe it was Dorothy, was it Miller Equipment would bring their equipment to Mr. Christman's house, just so it would be close to the fairgrounds. So, once you started seeing that equipment there, you knew it was about fair time. So it was, all the little things. I know reading the Heritage newsletter, there's I Remember When page. If anybody's got fair I Remember When, send it in. I would enjoy reading those myself.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Steve.
My dad, Frank Fisher, when he was president of the fair, just talk a little bit tonight about our present leadership. There was this kid, he was almost a nuisance. He was on his heels all the time. This kid was about 10, 12 years old. But this kid knew as much about the fair as my dad did. I guess he was so much of a pest you learned tonight, he put him at digging a ditch. That was Kevin Bieber. This guy, he could have ran the fair when he was 12 years old. Thank you, Kevin.
I can remember when I used to, I worked at Bethlehem Steel, and my dad, George Schlegel, he said that he needed somebody to go along over to Ezra Knolls to sew tents. And 3 nights a week, I'd go over there, help sew tents, so we could patch them for the fair. And then I got to go along to the big tent that was down here. They had before the building. We took it into Reading, inside the courthouse, and put that big tent up there for the Crystal Restaurant. And we went a couple of days a week, we had to go in there and get everything put up and down. We took that tent and we brought it back and we used it again. That little large tent.
Any other stories? Questions?
I was the one that got the 2 pigs.
And there actually is a picture, Mabel's picture is actually on the front cover of the Berks Historical Review from about early 1950s. There was a hand-drawn photo, a hand-drawn picture of her with her pigtails on the side, holding this pig that used to be one of the contests here. We've had a lot of contests throughout the years, but that was one contest. It was a pig chase. You had to chase a pig and catch a pig, and so if you look over here, the Historical Review is sitting over here with her picture on it. By the greased tail. I'm not sure that would go over too big nowadays. Especially with the pig as a prize.
Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Do you know if BB&T will continue?
Putting me on the spot. I can tell you that our CEO was at the past fair doing the celebrity showmanship contest and took the microphone and said that they are definitely, BB&T, National Pen is definitely back for this year. I can't speak for future years yet, so this year definitely they are back, yes. So we'll keep working at them for future years. So, any other questions? If not, I want to take this opportunity to thank Dena for putting everything together, the slideshow, all the stuff. Thank you. And I want to thank the Heritage Association for having us here tonight, and I also, let's give them a big round of applause. And most importantly, on behalf of all the Oley Fair officers, I want to thank just about all of you. I know you volunteer for the fair in one way or the other. If you don't volunteer for the fair, we could use you somewhere, somehow. Please see Dena or myself, and we'll put you to work. But for all of you that do volunteer year after year and make this fair what it is, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Thank you, that was great. We appreciated that very much. Just a few things. We do have our books and other items for sale at the back table. Just a side note, we just reprinted the dedication booklet from the consolidated school when it was built. This was printed originally in 1930, and we just reprinted it. It has some great ads from the 30s, state-of-the-art equipment in the building in 1930, which is interesting to read. And also it has the history of the Oley schools written by Newton Geist. This is for sale for $5. We have a limited supply tonight, but we'll be printing more if anybody's interested in that. Also, we value your memberships. If you're not a member and would like to become one, you can do so for as little as $10 minimum. We will take donations of any size, but you're welcome to sign up tonight if you have not done that yet. And also, we have good food in the back, so please help yourself to refreshments. And thank you again, Kevin and Dena, and have a good night.